Hey, friends, we are back, and we're going to talk to you today about the rest of the division. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is Locked On Twins. Why are we talking about other teams? Well, we're going to talk about the rest of the Central and all the teams that were looking up at the Twins when the season ended and get a feel for what their off seasons will have to look like if we're not going to have a repeat division winner. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter or on X at Brandon_WARNE. He's Dave Brown. You should follow him because he needs more followers at Answer Dave Brown. Exactly how it sounds is exactly how it's spelled. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube, and of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, we'll encourage you to be active with the show. We may do some live shows, Dave Brown, if you're up for it, because they're actually kind of fun, kind of exhilarating, kind of terrifying, because if you make mistakes, they're already out there. But yeah, so one, how are you doing? And two, we might do that.
Well, live shows sound terrifying, but when we do these, they always seem live.
Yep.
And there's very little editing. So I'd be up for it, definitely.
Well,
and we're not only going to talk about the AL Central, but we're going to talk about the NFC North. It's another division we're going to talk about because the Bears beat the Vikings last night, if you hadn't heard.
As penance, or as out of respect for you, the new co-host, I am actually wearing, if people can see, a Muhsin Muhammad jersey. May remember him not at all if you're of a certain age, or from the Carolina Panthers is where I remember him. Vastly underrated player, but toward the end with the Bears. Dave, one thing I was thinking about too that always made me laugh, unrelated, is when old Saturday Night Live episodes would be on, and it would be like, it's Saturday Night Live. And then the little thing would crawl on there and say, recorded from an earlier live broadcast, as though you could somehow ever have a video that wasn't live when it was shot. I always felt like that was kind of a funny way to phrase it.
That's true. But the show isn't called Locked On Twins Live, although it could be. That'd be some good marketing. So I don't know if we're misleading people, or they're just mistaken, or they think it's live. But I think we do a good job of faking it, even if it's not.
Well, fake it till you make it. One thing we need to talk to before we get to the show is that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So if you put a $5 moneyline bet down on the Bears, you have $150 in bonus play if your team, the Bears, won, which they did. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Dave, I don't want to belabor the point. I don't want to talk about other teams too much, but man, yeah, that was a pretty brutal game to watch. Not much left to say about it, honestly.
Well, I was going to call them the Twins, but the Vikings, they turned the ball over so much, and the Bears, I think, converted their turnovers into like -7 points. It's just it was. You mentioned the immovable force versus the intractable object, and that's not what that phrase is, but people get what I'm talking about. It was just it was not a good exhibition of football. Yeah, right. Yeah. It was just Justin Fields. I mean, good for him after the fumbleitis there in the fourth quarter. Came through with a big throw and got into Cairo Santos range. But I think both teams are going to want to forget about that game in the long run pretty quickly. Hey, I'm just so people don't think I'm really wearing this hat, not because the Bears won, but because I have hat hair or bed hair right now. It's out of control, and I couldn't brush it into.
Oh, see, I do too. I'm actually getting cut tomorrow. Pretty bad.
So I'm just trying to look professional. So, and just so you know, I mean, we're still all about this. This is what we're really about here. It's not really football season; it's baseball season.
So speaking of Homer Hankies, if people are not watching and instead listening, Dave showed us
Sorry.
Now used Homer Hanky. The Twins are the defending division champions, but reigning. Yeah, exactly. But they've also lost 2 starters. And the team that I think is my favorite to knock them off next year picked up one of those starters. So what I'm asking you, Dave Brown, is it ridiculous to consider the Twins still the favorite given what we do or do not know at this point of the offseason?
Well, things are pretty unsettled. If you look at
Yeah.
how many teams, have full rosters or guaranteed contracts, there's a lot in flux. That's FLUX.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, yes, but you would expect, all things being equal, once we have 40-man rosters populated toward near the beginning of spring training, that the Twins are going to be the favorites again. And it's going to take, some kind of off seasons for the Guardians or the Tigers or the White Sox or Royals to unseat them in the Central. I think it is possible. I like the Kenta Maeda move for the Tigers. I like some other things that they're doing. But I would say that the Twins are prohibitive favorites, considering, remember last year, I mean, they won the division and lots of things didn't go right for the Twins, and they still won anyway. A lot of that is because lots of things went wrong for the other teams, but they're still, relatively speaking, the cream of the AL Central crop.
When I look at the roster, to me, the Twins are just head and shoulders above everybody else in the division. And I know, people who are listening who are not Twins fans, which probably not that many, will probably be like, oh, he's just being a homer. But no other team in the division has backup options like Trevor Larnach, Jose Miranda, Christian Vasquez, or Ryan Jeffers, if you want to call it that. The depth that the Twins have amassed puts them in a class unto themselves in the division. Now, you as a more unbiased observer and definitely as someone who has covered the game at large in a way that I never have, you're probably more equipped to look at it with a little more of a critical eye. What am I missing when I say that I think this Twins team is head and shoulders more talented than any other team in the division?
An actual answer, Brandon, I think this is why everybody respects you.
No, they
don't. You're not unbiased, but you try and look at the Twins objectively, and the Tigers are just not there yet. I mean, they made some progress last year. I like what the top of the order might bring, especially if Parker Meadows can come through.
I love Riley Green.
I had a bad fantasy team, and my first baseman was Spencer Torkelson. But if you look real close at his season, he made Riley Green too. They both made big improvements. They went from these guys going to make it to they can play. We know they can play. There's another step to take. But you know what? You mentioned the Twins' depth after that. I know they added Mark Canha and they have some other players, but they don't have the depth that the Twins do. They've got, looks like maybe 3 good starting pitchers, a couple of good relief pitchers. But this is not a team. This is a team that's going to need the Twins to severely regress even more to have things go wrong. Correa out half the season, Buxton backing up, Kirilloff, more injuries than last year. And I'm knocking on wood. I'm not saying I hope this happens, but the Twins really need to put it in reverse to have anybody overtake them.
Yeah, and I think the fact that, again, like you kind of alluded to, they did what they did this last year with Carlos Correa severely compromised, with Byron Buxton a non-factor after the first couple months and then just not playing.
Right.
The sense to me is that the Twins are still on an upward trajectory, easy for me to say, in that even though the division will be like, oh, they won it, how much better are they going to get? How much higher can they get? It was not a storybook kind of season that you're going to see a retrospective on the Hallmark Channel coming up here with Lacey Chabert sometime in December. It's not going to happen.
I might watch that show, but you're right.
Yeah, it was a workmanlike season. It was not it was not great.
Well,
So
a couple things did happen. I mean, not to get all retrospective. We are looking at the other teams in the division. We're looking forward,
nope,
but
all
the
good.
Twins, they beat the Yankees in a regular season series. They got a playoff win. I mean, if I'm editing the yearbook, that's at the top of the list. Those are huge things that happened last season. So they got a couple of 500-pound gorillas off their back as far as that goes, and that allows them to move forward. I really think that there was progress made. I mean, it wasn't aesthetically a perfect season, but things kind of churned along, and lots of good things happened. We saw, as you said, the depth come through. Some young players, Royce Lewis, very exciting, and other guys too, not just him. So I think that the Twins are, as you said, also are in a good position to. The roster is unsettled, but they have enough depth pieces that we can see where things fall into place with this offseason. They can make some moves. They're in a good position to win 90 games this year, I think, and that's going to be enough.
The World Series was a 90-win team against an 84-win team, so it can be easy to forget that. Let's take a quick second. We'll talk about our friends at FanDuel. We'll come back and we'll assess the landscape of the division before we get everyone out of here. But first, a word from FanDuel. Okay, so you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers are getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. I think a moneyline bet on the Bears probably would have done pretty nice in a lot of different regards. But if you're just getting started, this is a way to go. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than to get in on the action. The app is super duper easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options such as spreads, overs and unders, player props, much, much more. You name it, they've got it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off this NFL season. Again, that's $150 if your team wins. That's bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, Dave, we're back into the mix. We're back into the bullpen, and we're talking first and foremost about the also-rans in the Central. At least for my money, I am not expecting big things from the Royals or the White Sox this next year. I don't want to gloss over them because you certainly will have a lot to say about them. But would you say the haves and the have-nots as far as the other teams in the division are Tigers, Guardians, and then the have-nots are the Royals, White Sox? I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, the Royals and White Sox do seem to have a lot in common right now. Chris Getz is trying to make over the White Sox in his own Royals image.
Yeah.
Be it with players or executives or what have you. I don't. There are two organizations, the White Sox and Royals, that you kind of, what are they doing? What direction are they heading? We don't know. It's really hard to say. The White Sox are probably going to cut payroll. The Royals are, while they're interested in having the locals finance a new stadium, are not really interested in making the team look presentable for games to get people out there, even as a half measure to, that's a team, that maybe could be like the Tigers this year and on the verge of nearly almost sort of competing. But the Royals seem to be a few steps away from that. And the White Sox are, they made the move to sign Paul DeJong to play a shortstop. He's gotten worse. Until this past season, he had gotten worse every season of his career. He was like second rookie of the year, and he actually made the All-Star team at some point. And right around then, he signed a contract extension, and he has just gotten worse and worse and worse until last year, where he sort of plateaued a little bit and maybe was slightly better for three different teams or something like that. So
it's kind of that thing where you sign veterans that you hope you can flip at July for something interesting. That's basically what's at play here.
I hope so, but Tim Anderson's not coming back. I think there are lots of other better options than him at short, but
Mhm.
They have Andrew Benintendi, who they signed last year. Why did they do that? Now they got this guy, the most expensive contract in player history. Speaking of old Royals,
Ugh, and he slugged like 350.
right? And to call that slugging is berating of the slugging term.
Yep.
So noodling.
Noodling.
So the White Sox need, several other players to build around Luis Robert, and they don't have Lucas Giolito anymore, or Luis Giolito. They need lots of stuff. I don't know what they're gonna. They haven't had a second baseman. It's like the Guardians haven't had like 3 outfielders for 7 years. The White
Right.
Sox haven't had a second baseman since Ray Durham, I think.
Right.
So Canerco's not coming through that door either. So Andrew Vaughn is not developing as a power hitter. It's not looking good for the White Sox, and they have a lot of work to do.
Is there any part of you that thinks that they should trade both Dylan Cease and Luis Robert? Because here's the deal. The trades that got them to where they are or where they wanted to be were trades of players like this that brought back lots of prospects. I mean, Lucas Giolito was one of those players. You have the Adam Eaton deal, bringing him back. You have the Chris Sale deal, bringing back Yohan Moncada. Do you try to go to that well again? Or, what is, and if you trade one, why not trade the other? Like, what's the thought process?
The White Sox don't have it's been better this century, but they don't have a history of players like Luis Robert, guys that can slug big time and run the bases and go get the ball in center field. I mean, he's a franchise. He's not one of the 5 best players in the league, but he's one of the maybe 25 best players.
He could be though.
I think he's young enough, and they brought him in from Cuba and developed him, and it's the kind of thing where they maybe need to make a Chris Sale kind of deal, and I could see that with Cease. Cease probably pitched better last year than his results showed, but even that Chris Sale deal, it didn't exactly turn out how they wanted to. I mean, ever since Yohan Moncada had a couple of really good years and was building up to something, and then COVID came, and he's a guy who had it, and then has shown symptoms of having long COVID, and has not been the same ever since.
That's an interesting.
Can't run from here to there without pulling something or losing his breath, or it's like me running the bases. It's not good. He can still pick it at third base, but he hasn't shown the power or the hitting or anything. So I don't know how good that deal ended up being for the White Sox. But and I do like, speaking of deals like that, what they did trading Aaron Bummer for a bunch of guys on the Braves who they probably were going to non-tender. But I like Michael Soroka, and I like not Jordan Schusterman, but
Jared Schuster.
So I like those guys, and that kind of deal is good. I mean, but you're not building around Aaron Bummer, so you're not really losing that much. You trade Robert and center, then you're taking a real chance there. I would hold on to him. Maybe trade Dylan Cease. I wouldn't trade the hitter though.
But Eloy's as good as gone, right? I mean,
it seems like it.
Yeah,
it seems like it. He's got, obviously the injury thing follows him around, sort of like he follows balls into the nets around in the outfield. It's always like, well, what's going to happen next? So it would make sense to deal him. He doesn't have as many dimensions as Robert. He hasn't turned out to be as good as Robert. So you could deal him and maybe get something, and maybe get something for Cease, and then you've started a rebuild in earnest if that happens.
Well, Jim Varney would be proud. Eloy plays left like Roomba, who is very disoriented. And I don't mean to say that as I guess I do. Yeah, he's not good out there. I get the feeling I feel like the White Sox might keep Robert, and then like the way their luck is going, he'll get dinged up, have a decent year, and they'll end up trading him a year too late, and he'll blow up. It just feels like they are snake bitten right now, whether it's the Reinsdorf curse or what it is. But everything that I think of, like, oh, get rid of Moncada. Well, nobody wants him because of the salary. trade Cease, keep Robert. Well, how's that not going to work? Or trade both. Well, how's that not going to work? It's just it's hard for me to find a lot of optimism for them. Much the same as the Royals, honestly.
For sure. And part of the issue is, other than Robert, a lot of the other young players that they've gotten, and I alluded to what may be wrong with Moncada, but they haven't necessarily developed them either. I mean, there hasn't really been an injury with Andrew Vaughn, but he's very average and doesn't seem to be getting better, and isn't really a great player on defense. It's first base, so it's not that big a deal. They're not really to fully develop the young players that they have, and a lot of those guys, Chris Getz has been promoted after a lot of this happened, and I don't know that all of their ills of their young players are his fault, but the White Sox still have, they change all the players out. Jerry Reinsdorf is still the owner, and it's kind of like there's only so much they can do with him pulling the strings, and they had a chance to get any GM they wanted, any team president they wanted in the offseason, but Reinsdorf's like, no, we got to win now, so the heck with that. We're just going to promote Getz questionably, and maybe he can do the job, but Chris Getz still has to answer to Reinsdorf, and Reinsdorf is not going to spend every last dollar like a big market team should. He's not going to make terribly adventurous moves that cost a lot of money. There's just only so much the White Sox can do. I mean, they did win the World Series with him as the owner, and I would say that's happenstance at best. So I think no matter what Chris Getz does, he's going to be limited by the man behind the curtain.
Well, hey, Dave, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, Dave, didn't leave a whole lot of time for the Royals before we move on to the contenders, but is there anything, you being local to them, you get a good look at them all the time. Is there anything encouraging outside of Bobby Witt Jr.? I think MJ Melendez, if they could actually just let him catch, could be a decent player. He was a disaster defensively, but the bat to me looks like it could be something. But there's not that much to get excited about right now.
No, not terribly. Although the development of Bobby Witt into a really good player, which he was last year, is a saving grace. And they do have newer people coaching the pitching staff and the hitters, which leaves room for optimism that the prospects who aren't necessarily as talented as Bobby Witt, who might be coming up through the system, will be given a chance to be the best versions of themselves. We've talked about, is Brady Singer available in a trade? And I think I think we want to see him develop a little bit more. I don't know if it was an injury or just an inconsistency last year. He had shown a lot of promise in the first half. A lot of improvement. Yep. I think it would be wise to let the pitching staff, the coaching staff for the pitchers continue to develop him. See if maybe they can do that with other players. We'll see. They added Kyle Wright from the Braves. He's had a shoulder injury, so I don't know how much ceiling is there, but the Royals have not a lot of Bobby Witt type prospects, but they do have some guys who are coming up who might be good players who you can plug in here or there. What they really need is not only to continue to develop those kind of players, but they need to spend some money on some free agents just to give Bobby Witt someone to play with, so he's not standing out there by himself.
Yeah.
The fans the media should put pressure on the Royals to spend some darn money in free agency. There's a lot of good players out there, and if worse comes to worse, you can trade them later for somebody at a deadline next year. That's what they need to do. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that, though. So I think the White Sox and the Royals are going to be duking it out for last place.
Let's talk about these Guardians, because my question there is, if they don't trade Shane Bieber in the offseason, the likelihood of them getting Giolito'd there seems to be kind of strong, right? Like there is a declining return on his pitching. He's just not the pitcher he was before, which isn't to say he can't be again, but getting to a point where the further he gets into his, club control, the less he's going to bring back in a trade. You got to find the right time to move him if you're going to. We all pretty much realize Cleveland will. What I'm dancing around is this team better if they move Bieber now and go with Bybee and Gavin Williams and all those guys at the top of the rotation as opposed to running it back with Bieber?
It depends on what the trade market thinks of his elbow and what do they need to see out of him, if they need to see anything to maybe get a better, to improve his value. That's the thing. The timing is bad. They probably would have traded him last year, but he wasn't really healthy enough to be at his best. And that stinks for how the Guardians do business, which is a little bit like how the Royals do business. They're not big spenders. And I think that's a guy that because of the state of his performance and the state of his elbow, they really need to wait. It's not an ideal situation, but I think if they do wait, I don't know if it's the trading deadline, but if he shows something, then that's what, I think there's still a bounce left in his value. And I think that's when you deal him. You can kind of roll the dice that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah. And it's complicated because they traded all those guys at the deadline when they were like a game out, basically waved the white flag. With Bieber, there are free agents that are his caliber available right now. Like maybe Lucas Giolito isn't as good as him, but if you ask me who I want over the next X number of years, if you say Giolito, I'm not going to argue with you because if he's healthy or whatever. So the problem becomes if the Guardians have to wait into the offseason to see who's going to be interested in Bieber because teams don't know if they're interested in Bieber or they're just going to sign Giolito so they don't have to trade their prospects. It leaves Cleveland kind of standing there like, all right, well, what do we do in the meantime? Granted, if you trade Bieber, it doesn't probably change your course of like signing another Josh Bell type. You're going to do that anyway. But I think it really puts you at a risk of not being able to address your actual real needs within your budget early in the offseason when you have a better feel of what your roster is going to look like. So I think that gets Cleveland in kind of a goofy spot where then if you hold him into the season and he's pitching well and you are, let's say, within shouting distance of the division, then you have another bad optics trade to flip him at the deadline, or you keep him, QO him. I don't know. I think they obviously QO him just for the pick. But I just feel like it's more precarious than it really should be for a pitcher of his caliber and a team that does not have a ton of commitments outside of Jose Ramirez.
Well, it's possible that if you look at the trade market and you see, and there are teams out there that just love Justin Bieber, Shane Bieber. I call him Justin Bieber sometimes to myself to make the joke, but if there's somebody that's in love with a guy now and will pay healthy elbow Shane Bieber prices, then maybe the Guardians are in business. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pull the trigger on that. But I think he's been iffy enough over the past few months and several starts that we're going to have to wait and see. But we know that they would prefer to get a big return for him. And I think the bigger return is probably going to end up coming after he shows that he's healthy.
You need one GM and only one GM to say that I don't care that you broke your elbow. And that will be it. Talk me out of the Tigers. I'm not saying I love the Tigers. I have a healthy respect for them. But Kenta Maeda is their number 2 starter right now on roster resource. Like Matt Manning was the number 9 overall pick. He's their 3rd starter, hasn't shown as much as you'd like. And then Casey Mize is right now penciled in at number 5. He's barely pitched. There's parts to like, and there are teams that can be a bigger sum than their parts. But right now, I think there's enough for them to be in the mix, like an 84, 85, 86 win team. If I truly believe in my heart of hearts that the Twins can win 94, 95 games. But I just still need to see quite a bit more before I'm really going to put them toe-to-toe with the Twins. Like, I like Tariq Skubal, but can he stay healthy? I like any number of those pitchers that I mentioned beforehand. Can they stay healthy? And even if Casey Mize stays healthy, he's still just learning the league. He's still just figuring out how to pitch in the big leagues. Development is not linear, and I feel like the Tigers could very easily take a step back this year, a la Twins. In 2015, they were decent. 2016, they were horrible. 17, they were decent. 18, they were bad. There could be an ebb and a flow that maybe we're not expecting with a team like the Tigers, who seem to be on the quote-unquote upswing.
Yeah, Reese Olson, as a rookie last year, had a heck of a season. And that's the only guy that, I'm going to trust to make 30 starts. That's kind of iffy. You don't know what you're going to get out of Casey Mize. Matt Manning, thankfully for him, came through and had some decent results. Still not sure exactly what they have there.
Yep.
Maeda, how many starts are you going to get out of him? Skubal, you mentioned that he's had an injury bug. I just don't know. And, we're talking about an offense that is not so good. It's got some promising players at the top, but it's not so good and so deep that they're going to hit around a pitching rotation like that if they have injury problems. So I don't see how this is going to surpass the Twins in this offseason. We'll see how much the junior Illiches will spend in free agency. Maeda is a great start. I think they probably need another starter, and they probably need at least one or two more starting players in the lineup that are not on the roster right now to change my mind about them winning the division.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think the Twins are in the driver's seat. And I think everything we've said in the last 32 minutes would back that up. Well, Dave, you're going to be MIA tomorrow. We will miss you deeply, but we'll catch up with you on Thursday, I think. How does that sound?
That sounds great, Brandon. That's why everybody respects you.
Exactly, and they shouldn't. But that's it. That's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us. Give us a 5-star review, thumbs up, all that fun stuff. We have one commenter, and I say give thumbs up on YouTube. And YouTube has thumbs up and thumbs down. But our friend gives us a thumbs up in the chat. You know what? He's a very literal man, and I appreciate that. So thumbs up in the chat works good, but also thumbs up on YouTube. Click that little button. It's good for the soul, and it's good
Thank
for
you,
Dave.
internet person.
Exactly. So, but again, that's it. That's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Twins, and we'll see you tomorrow night.